Welcome to Rank and File Wrapped. We're going to be recapping our 2025 predictions with a little award ceremony. Now, some of these awards highlight our accuracy, some make fun of just how bad certain predictions were, and at the end, we'll explain the data behind our predictions. Now, this is Vegas, home to dozens of sportsbooks who used advanced data analytics to come up with lines for each team and are the gold standard for sports predictions. And this is us, Jonah and Connor from Rank and File Sports, two college guys who love football and annoy the crap out of our friends talking about it every single day, including the off season. But all that talk pays off, which you'll see near the end of the video as we go through all of our data. But for now, enjoy us having some fun with some of our best and worst predictions from the 2025 season.
And what better way to kick it off than one of the worst predictions we had? And I'm going to take the blame for this one. The Kool-Aid Trophy for this past season goes to Baylor drinking the Kool-Aid, and it did not taste very good in the end. I was very high on this Baylor team going into this year, considering how much they returned offensively. Sawyer Robertson is their starting quarterback, both their starting running backs, a good wide receiver room. And the fact that their head coach is a defensive-minded head coach, I thought they could put it together and make a run similar to Texas Tech and maybe even make the playoffs. And yeah, Baylor didn't make a bowl game. Um, I really don't know what went wrong here. I'm surprised that Dave Aranda did not get fired, considering the fact that they did not really do too much well this season. Yeah, I'm really at a loss for words, and I take full responsibility for this one because Jonah did try to talk me out of this a little bit and maybe temper my expectations, but I was very adamant that this was going to happen.
Yeah, I personally was trying to pick another team to have a lot of success in the Big 12, and we ended up making a compromise. I got to make one of my other predictions, and Connor got to pick Baylor as our way too early Big 12 champions. So that didn't really end up going well. You'll see the team that I'm talking about just a little bit later because I ended up being pretty accurate with that pick. But we'll go ahead and move on to our next award, which is going to be the Should Have Pulled the Trigger Award. These are two teams that we didn't necessarily predict to have bad seasons, but both of us thought that they had a lot of potential, and we were thinking, maybe they could hit around, 8, 9, 10 wins. And in the end, we had them going somewhere around, I think it was around 6-6 for each of them. Maybe it was 7-5 for Vanderbilt, if I remember right. But basically, both of these teams, we kind of had it at the start of the or at the start of the off season, thinking there's some potential here, and we just didn't end up going for it. And yeah, what could have been with these two? Because both of these teams surprised a lot of people, more so Houston.
Yeah, I definitely think Vandy was out of these two teams the one that we were definitely a lot closer to actually picking to do pretty well. I think at one point we might have even predicted them to go 9-3 potentially, and ultimately were like, okay, maybe this is a little too far. We can't have this much faith in a team that is so reliant on their offense to get it done. And that's ultimately what they ended up doing this season. But Houston, I think we were just expecting Connor Weigman not to really pan out as well as he did this season in his first year as a Cougar. But now both these teams are going in two different directions. Vandy losing a lot of the success they had this past season, whether it's to the transfer portal or to the NFL draft. But I think Houston is here to stay. So I think we're gonna probably see the Cougars jump up in some of our predictions in the coming off season. The next award is the Look Away Award, another bad one. Now we had a couple pretty bad predictions where we thought they were going to do really good and actually be front runners, but a lot of people also thought these teams were going to do pretty well, and the big one was Clemson. They were our preseason national champs. We had them defeating Ohio State because they had Cade Klubnik returning. Dabo Swinney's still their head coach, and he finally used the transfer portal. They had arguably the second and third best defensive players on their roster in Peter Woods and TJ Parker. They had so much going for them, and it all just came crashing down so early on in the season. There was a time even that they didn't even look like they were going to make a bowl game until they started to catch fire towards the end of the year. But yeah, this is definitely a prediction we both wanted to forget. Some other teams that we considered were a team like LSU, but I think that one is a little bit more chalked up to injuries and a pretty tough schedule. But Clemson, I really couldn't tell you why they were such a disappointment this year.
Yeah, we almost put LSU here, but we were only 2 games off on LSU. It wasn't like we had LSU as like going 11-1 or something. I think we had them at 9-3. They finished 7-5. So that one wasn't necessarily terrible. But Clemson, I mean, a lot of people thought this was a playoff team in the preseason. So I'm not necessarily that mad about predicting them to go 11-1. Preseason national champions, that definitely that doesn't look great. Um, I really, when I'm looking at the NFL draft class for next year, though, there's just a ton of Clemson players. There's really no explanation for why they did so bad other than just poor performance. So yeah, this one I think surprised a lot of people and obviously us. So we'll go ahead and look away and move on to the next slide. That's going to be the This Is Fine trophy. And you'll notice all three of these teams we had in our preseason playoffs. So another not great one here. I think we're hitting basically all of our worst predictions in this video, and all the other ones we were within like 1 to 2 games on. But yeah, Penn State shocked a lot of people. And then we jumped on, I think these are the two hype trains we jumped on that we probably shouldn't have. We were generally good at avoiding quite a few of them, such as UCLA. Didn't fall for that one bit. Um, but yeah, South Carolina, year two Lenora Sellers, the team just it, it it was so much worse this year than it was last year. And then Florida, we had them going 9-3, but sneaking into the playoffs because their schedule was so tough. And yeah, their schedule was too tough. They did not go 9-3. They lost a lot more games than that.
This trophy could also be redefined as the injury suck trophy because Penn State, even with the injuries towards the end of the year, they still played pretty good. But losing Drew Aller for the season and just dealing with so much, along with firing James Franklin, it was just a downward spiral once they lost to Oregon. And then South Carolina, Lawrence Sellers dealt with some injuries. DJ Lagway dealt with some injuries for Florida. And yeah, these were just hype trains, at least with the two SEC schools that we were both pretty confident in having decent seasons, and obviously that completely derailed within the first couple of weeks. So hopefully we learned from both of these two SEC teams, and hopefully there's not any more major downfalls of an entire program in a season. So that we don't have to have this trophy as a continuous representative in our future offseason content. But next up is the Google Me Awards. These were teams that we should have probably done a little bit more research on, or teams that we weren't initially super high on that actually kind of blew us out of the water. Indiana, yes, we had them going 9-3, but we thought they were going to see some regression from last season. We thought that just bringing in so many transfer portal players was probably going to take them a little bit to gel, considering they had a pretty difficult schedule. And yeah, they're the first 16-0 team in college football history. Sorry, not first 16-0 team in the college football playoff era, and were just absolutely dominant throughout the entire season. But the two bigger surprises come from the ACC, that being Virginia and Wake Forest. Virginia, with Chandler Morris coming in, led them to the ACC title game, and they had to go to overtime and ultimately lost to Duke. But just a phenomenal turnaround for them. And we probably should have looked at Chandler Morris a little bit and considered that he could possibly lead this team to a pretty successful season. But Wake Forest, by far, is the one we didn't see coming. We didn't think they had anything going for them. Their only major weapon was their running back. And this team rattled off 8 wins, went to a bowl game, looked pretty good doing it. I just don't know what can be said except Google Wake Forest.
Yeah, I mean, Wake Forest was the one that surprised us the most. And I do want to shout out a guy. I don't remember his name, but there was a guy on our Wake Forest predictions who told us that Wake Forest was going to do really well this season. Now, I'm pretty sure he said they were going to be ACC championship contenders and went a little bit overboard, but he was definitely closer than we were. So shout out to that one commenter. Virginia, nobody really saw Virginia coming. The best thing that I have to say about our Virginia predictions is preseason we had them beating Florida State. And we picked that the week of as well. So that was one good thing about our Virginia predictions. And then Indiana, I mean, I don't think anybody really expected Indiana to do what they did this year, especially in the preseason. Our Indiana video, our predictions we put out in like May. So, I mean, the only game that I think we had them losing that maybe people who were like as high as you could be on Indiana, they probably had them going 10-2, losing to Penn State and Oregon. Very fair. Both of those were road games. And then we also just had Illinois on there. We were not on the Illinois hype train necessarily, as in Illinois was going to make the playoffs. That was a very common theme last year. We didn't necessarily buy that. I think we had Illinois going either 9-3 as well, or maybe 8-4. Um, but yeah, that's the main thing with all three of these teams. And then our next award, this one's kind of going to me, the Foresight Trophy. I remember around this time last year. I predicted to Connor specifically that Texas Tech was going to make the college football playoffs. They were my Big 12 champion right around this time last year. So we did beat everybody else to that prediction. And you can see our prediction over there on the side. We had them going 10-2. And I don't want to throw Connor under the bus, but I really wanted them to be 11-1. That was what I had from the very start. And we had to make a few compromises so that, like we mentioned earlier, Baylor could end up winning the Big 12 in our predictions. But regardless, we had Texas Tech at the college football playoffs, and I would say this was probably one of our better predictions in terms of what we talked about. But there's one more that we absolutely nailed that nobody else really saw coming.
And that is our Heisman Trophy. Our Heisman Trophy goes to Notre Dame. And we predicted them perfectly this season. The 0-2 start with the losses to Miami and Texas A&M, and then winning out the rest of the season. And now, not to really call anyone out, but absolutely zero ball knowledge. The schedule is a joke. If CJ Carr is good, they go undefeated. It's not happening. USC is the only team that has a chance to beat Notre Dame. Lol, no. No one has film on Carr or Minchie. Both quarterbacks have been in the system. The defense has gotten better. The new offense is going to be fine. There's film on Carson Beck. Notre Dame wins both these games pretty easily. Um, yeah, we're both feeling pretty good about this one. This Notre Dame video, when we released it, I think was one of our most watched and interacted with videos in this channel's history because that 0-2 start was such a radical idea. Everyone had Notre Dame as a national champion favorite early on in the season after just being in the national championship. And no one really could comprehend Notre Dame losing two games in a row, even if they were against tough opponents, except us. And, we're going to pat ourselves on the shoulders for that because we got a lot of hate for this.
Yeah, that there pretty much every comment under that video just immediately was hating on it. So I feel like looking back at it on this season, it's pretty easy for a lot of people to be like, "Oh yeah, it's why wouldn't Notre Dame have started 0-2?" But this was a very unpopular idea. And we have one more comment that I think was my favorite. This guy had basically three separate predictions. He got one of them right. Yes, Carson Beck does in fact suck. However, Notre Dame didn't blow out Miami, and I'm guessing that Marcus Freeman lost a lot of sleep over Texas A&M, especially once he saw the college football playoff top 12 at the end of the year. Now, we're going to move on to the more analytical side of this. We're going to be pretty brief, honestly. Basically, just highlighting the teams where we predicted their record exactly correct. To explain it just a little bit, next to the team name, you'll see the over/under wins. This is we got them from FanDuel. Then you have their actual wins on the season, the difference between those two, our prediction, the difference between our prediction and their actual wins, and then our projection. That came from a percentage that we assigned to each game for the chance for the team to win that game. So essentially creating our own Vegas line. And then you can see the difference between our lines and the actual line. So looking at this one, 1.87 for us versus 1.85, just barely losing to Vegas on the ACC. Moving on to the Big 12, or Big 10 next. We had four teams exactly right. Vegas got us by a little bit more on the Big 10, but my personal favorite is the Big 12, the hardest conference to predict. This one, we actually beat Vegas on our projections and even our actual predictions, which, when you think about it, Vegas goes to the point 0.5 on their over-unders. Our predictions were rounded to a whole number. So technically, for our predictions, any number within point 0.5 is within that margin of error between us and Vegas. So we were within that for all of our predictions as far as averaging it by the conferences. So we beat Vegas here. Our worst conference was the SEC, largely due to teams like South Carolina and Florida, which you saw earlier on with the This Is Fine award. Alabama, we got them right. And we did lose to Vegas on this one and weren't quite within that point 0.5, unfortunately. However, when you look at the overall numbers, here's what we've got. Vegas missed the over/under uh, compared to the actual games won for each team by 1.85 games. We missed it by 1.88. Now, that is a pretty small number. In fact, that is only about two games out of over 600 games that we predicted that Vegas ended up beating us by, which is about 0.33%. That's how much Vegas had on us. Just two college guys who love watching college football and talk about it all the time. We do our research, and hopefully, this video will allow you to see that, and maybe you'll consider subscribing and check out our content for 2026 because we're going to be starting real soon. Schedules are coming out for the conferences, and we are ready to start our 2026 expectation series.
So we'll leave you with this. If you don't pay attention to anything else in this video, just look at this last slide and know this. Jonah and I know ball. Commenters beware. We know what we're doing, and this is the evidence that backs it up. But like Jonah said, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future content because we will start pumping out our expectations over the next couple months, and we will see you in the next video.